Hey everyone, my name is Chris Lambert. On this channel, we talk Kanye West, and we are talking the Jason Lee and Ye interview that finally came out. It was recorded a couple weeks back and then got multiple release dates that kept getting pushed back and then finally came out on Monday. And 45-minute interview, so a little lengthy. It's not Drink Champs long, it's not Joe Rogan long, but it's a good sit-down interview, especially because Jason Lee does a good job in terms of being an interviewer that listens. Like, we know, if you've ever watched a Kanye interview, you know Ye likes to talk, he goes on tangents, he branches out. Like, he starts talking on one topic, jumps to another, jumps to another, jumps to another, and then has this great capacity to kind of circle all the way back around to his initial topic. So Jason does a good job of just kind of listening to Ye and letting him talk on some subjects while also asking questions here and there, like still leading the conversation. So it was a good interview. I don't think it goes up there in like the Drink Champs territory, the Zane Lowe territory, even the 2013. You're not having those big explosive moments, right? With like Houseway. Actually, it's the opposite in this interview, as Ye is kind of in this state of like relaxed chill mode that we haven't seen in an interview for a minute, especially in contrast with the Drink Champs interview, where there's so much alcohol involved. There's so many people kind of like hyping everything up, and you can see Ye's like energy kind of playing to the room. And here it's just him and Jason Lee, top floor. Ye's like chill the whole time. He's kind of like geeking out about things at times. There's a lot of vulnerability in this interview. Like, if it feels like if you're just getting to hang with Ye for an hour in a day, that this is what it would be like. Like, he's just stopping by, you're having lunch and talking, shooting the breeze, and then he's off onto his next adventure. You can kind of see Archer down there. So definitely worth watching, though. In the 45 minutes, they cover a lot of ground, some of the clips of which like came out in the interim between the recording in this. So there have already been some articles going over some of the topics, like Ye talking about security getting between him and his kids and how much he didn't like that, or talking about how it wasn't a fan that was seeking autographs that he ended up punching, but a paparazzi person or an autograph hunter that collects all these autographs, then sells them for money, and that this was the person that was bothering him at 3 a.m. that he asked to get away. But definitely worth watching, especially Ye talks about it. And the thing that jumps out to me most about this interview, because it's been about 24 hours since I watched it, and just what's like stuck with me this whole time has been Ye talking about how much it helps him to be seen and to be heard, and how good this is for him. And I think that makes a lot of sense, because it's like, you watch something like this and you hear from Kanye himself, you hear him joke, like you can see the jokes that he's making. He makes like a few clever remarks at times, and you can see kind of the cinematic way that he's thinking about things when he makes some of these jokes. Like, he talks about saying something and then going to the elevator and being like, oops, like, didn't mean to say that, or should it have said that? And just thinking about it in terms of like a Curb Your Enthusiasm scene, something like that playing out. But how humanized he is in this, because there is a dichotomy that forms. I talked about this in a recent video, between how people think of Ye in terms of the headlines, right? And this person that they're seeing in the headlines, seeing the articles about, that's shaped by the media, and how different that often can be from the person himself. And that's usually the journey of anybody that becomes a Kanye fan, is that you usually hear a song that you like, you start getting into the music, and you become a fan of the music, but you're not sure if you're a fan of Kanye himself until you start watching interviews, and still until you start seeing like a bit more about him and hearing a bit more about who he is as a person. And then usually that's when somebody goes like, oh, like the person I had built up in my head isn't at all the same person that we actually see talking and speaking and saying these things. Like, Ye, I think, typically is a very like kind person, and like a decent person overall, that's trying to do good things, that wants to do good things. But like, anybody can like be angry at times, or have some conflicting views, or even have opinions that you don't like. And this isn't me saying that like, once you're a fan of Kanye, you think he can do no wrong. Like, clearly not. You're not going to agree with everything. There are going to be things that you heavily disagree on. There are going to be things that like cross a line for you that cause breaks, like where you might be like, okay, I'm no longer a fan. And that's fine. It's not like all or nothing all the time. But I think the more that you start to have an understanding of the person aside from the headline, the easier it is to understand where some of the divide begins to occur between the headline and the person himself. Anyway, this is just one of those interviews that's very humanizing and very interesting just in terms of eras, because I think Kanye fans also tend to think of the eras that Ye has, which I think whether he's like actively attempting to create, it's just around each album there's usually such a vibe. Like you think about how he was dressing and presenting himself during the Graduation era, right? Like the stunner shades, and then the haircut he had during the 808s era and the suits that he was wearing versus My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy versus Yeezus, like Life of Pablo. His fashion always changes like around these different albums. There's usually a different what crusade isn't the right word, but a different topic that he's very interested in and exploring in the public eye, or a different overall story about what Ye's about at that time. And right now we're kind of in this post Donda, pre Donda 2 continuation of what was going on in 2021, but also a change of direction, because a lot of 2021, even though he was divorced from Kim, there was still like, will they, won't they? And now it seems to have reached a point where it's like, okay, they won't. Like, they're not going to get back together. So now this is the first interview in the Julia Fox era, right? Like, Kanye really stepping off into buying new houses, going about new projects. It feels like he's picking up speed as he's getting into this new life, having gotten to make Donda and clear out some of the thoughts that he was having. So getting this interview kind of in the midst of this 2022 Ye, this Donda 2 era Ye, I think is really good to have, and just to see some of his self-awareness, and it's good. And again, Jason does a good job of letting Ye talk and just letting him like speak on some of these things that he's really passionate about at the moment. So absolutely worth watching. We have an article here. I'm not going to read like line by line through this article, but just kind of showing some of the key topics that came up over the course of the interview, in case you just want to hear me talk about it rather than go and listen to it all yourself. So hot new hip hop, Robert Blair as the writer. And you can see here that one of the big topics was Kim and his kids. And that was one of the initial things that came out, where he was talking about dropping North off, North wanting to show him something, and security not letting him into the house. He talked a lot too about his cousins, who we saw like him arguing with in the video that leaked online, where people were kind of recording from a distance, and you see Ye yelling at his cousins late at night. And he said that they were supposed to go have a talk with Kim, specifically about like this right here, about like the security getting between him and his kids, the boundaries that were in place, and that they hadn't gone and had that conversation, or did it do it in a way that like Ye was happy with, and he was upset. And Jason Lee was talking about it too. Like, I watched that video, I just see like someone having an argument with their cousins. Like, I have cousins that I argue with. It wasn't as big of a deal as it seemed like some people, like, you couldn't just be human. And Ye's like, yeah, exactly. Like, I don't get, like, they constantly attempt to dehumanize me. But that was one of the big things that just kept coming up. And the other thing is that despite the headlines recently, right? Like Ye talking about Kim in the Easy song, like these TMZ articles that feel like purposely placed by the Kardashian like family or PR people to kind of take control of the narrative in terms of how Kim's being presented versus how Ye's being presented, raising Kim up a bit, bringing Kanye down a bit. In the midst of all of this, that seems like pretty ugly in the headlines, where you're like, oh, is there growing animosity between these two? Ye is very glowing in his response to Kim and how he talks about Kim throughout this interview. Like, you can tell there's still a lot of respect. There's still a lot of like love, not in necessarily the romantic sense, but just in the sense that like this is somebody that you spent years of your life with, it didn't work out, but, that doesn't mean that you don't care about him. And the self-awareness too, you see it here. He goes, there's a lot of people around Kim that can influence her. She's making a certain decision. She's making certain decisions. She's just looking for safety and a safe place to be, because I do these ideas where, like, man, if I'm the only person that's not with Hillary, then she's getting like attacked so much, telling me I can't wear the hats. So essentially, like, Kim's wanting to feel safe and that things are good and you can just like build and have your family. But the things that Ye's doing that he feels he needs to do, like, oh, what if I'm the only person not with Hillary, result in Kim not feeling safe, like feeling attacked, having to be back on the defenses. And he says, and she just, as a women just want security and comfort. But what she'd ultimately like is a husband to play the role of what's happening in Hollywood already. But that's not the case. You got Ye, and I'm here to improve upon the situation. And it's just this understanding that she wants someone that she can just, follow the flow of things with. And that's not a bad thing, right? And the same with Ye. He wants to push buttons. He wants to improve the situation. He wants to challenge. And that's also not a bad thing. It's just one of those things where when you're in a relationship and two people want different things, it can cause friction. But Ye's not blaming Kim. He's not blaming himself. He just seems to have a very healthy understanding and an empathetic understanding of like where Kim's coming from and what he can't provide that she wants, which is really, I don't know, I think good to hear, especially with people that have been saying like, oh, he just needs to let her go. Yeah, I mean, it seems like he's understanding what's going on in terms of why things might not go back to how he hoped they would go back at one point. It's like seeing what some of the deal breakers are. And then talking about this Ray J tape, that was another thing that we made, that we kind of talked about and touched upon in a video the other day. Apparently, there was rumors that Ray J had a second tape with Kim or an additional footage or something. So Ye actually flew out, met Ray J, got the laptop, brought it all the way back to New York before Kim was going to go onto SNL, and gave her the laptop and saying like she cried and was so happy. And after he said this, after this information kind of made its way into the media, a TMZ article quickly appeared from sources close to the Kardashians saying that they looked at the computer and there was no additional footage or tape. So while they appreciated the gesture, like, it's all good. Which some people were saying, like, what do you want them to say? Yeah, we found like 24 hours of footage. Oh my goodness. Like, we deleted all of that. That's not going to do anyone any good. So if there was anything on the laptop, why say it? And if there wasn't anything on the laptop, you just say that. So it's like kind of the best thing for them to say publicly is there was nothing on the laptop. And even if that's true, it's just like a peace of mind thing, right? Like Ye went, got this laptop and gave it, and there's that peace of mind that like, okay, this is it. There's nothing else on it. Sure, somebody might have made a copy of something. Files could be saved. But I think it's the gesture of the thing and the psychology of the thing. Like, I had the laptop that it was stored on, and now, like, hopefully this is it. A really nice thing. I think, maybe some other people disagree. Like, how could he? How dare he? But he talked about something, too. Like, it's all about taking the father out the home. He said in the interview's concluding moments, and about buying the house. I'm going to be so close, I'll be walking distance. And this was something that we've talked about on a few previous videos. Ye had mentioned before that his mom moved from Atlanta to Chicago, and that his dad had this choice of, I'm either going to move to Chicago to be near my kid and go to the city with the highest murder rate, the awful winters, or I'm going to stay in Atlanta where I have a career, it's warm, like I like living here. And he chose Atlanta. And Ye wasn't blaming his mom. He wasn't blaming his dad. He still got to go spend summers with his dad. I think his dad moved to DC when Ye was like 8 or 9. But it's something where he doesn't want to have that same situation going on where he's like living full time in Miami or Paris or somewhere else and not necessarily getting to spend as much time with his kids. So for him, having the situation he had growing up, he bought this house across the street from his kids, not to be creepy towards Kim, but to show them like, hey, I'm here. I have this place here. Like, Yes, he's still going to travel, right? Ye's still Ye. He's in Paris or was in Paris for Fashion Week. Like, we're still going to see him gallivanting. But I do think it's one of those important gestures to show, like, hey, I have a place that's here. I'm making an effort to be here for you. So that was nice as well, you know? Let's see, on music. And then he talked to a little bit. It's not actually like him talking about music. Like he wasn't talking about like making songs on Donda or Donda 2. Specifically, they're just using this to talk about Ye mentioning some people in music. So he was talking about politics and presidential run and ended up coming back to Big Sean and John Legend and saying, this is my biggest issue with Big Sean and John Legend. Kanye said, as part of a larger point around people striving to minimize his impact. They just went too easy. I changed both of these people's lives, and they about that, oh, don't pay attention, he's a rapper, he's this. And it's like, yeah, I'm a rapper, and obviously I'm a genius too, and yeah, this is America. So again, it's kind of talking about like some of his opinions that he has, kind of like a shut up and dribble situation where somebody, I forget the dumb woman's name, that was telling LeBron when LeBron had some views on things, just shut up and dribble. And then even Pete Davidson said something similar to Ye, where he's just like, you know, go make music. Like, we don't want to hear your opinions on politics. This kind of demeaning, I'm going to put you in a box and you're not qualified to speak on anything else just because you're good at this one thing, which like is the same thing that's been happening to Ye since the beginning when he's like, hey, I want to be a rapper. And they're like, you're a producer. Shut up. Like, you don't get to rap. And he's like, but I can rap. Can I do both things? And they're like, no, get out of here. But he could, and he did. But it seemed like that there was something that Big Sean and John Legend did where Ye felt like they were diminishing his view and his opinion and his voice. And he took that very personally. Like, oh, you know, Kanye's a great like musician or a great rapper, but you know, what's he know about these other things? And he took that pretty personally, but it seems like he's made up with Big Sean as like, you know, we heard that he was with Sean just like last week and that they talked it out. And even though neither of them apologized for what they did or said, they were moving on and were like cool with respecting each other's opinion. It doesn't seem like Ye's had that conversation with John Legend yet. But I could imagine that the day comes where they do have that conversation. I know the last I heard John Legend say on the situation was something like, you know, he and Ye, he still respected Ye as like a professional, but they weren't that close as like people anymore. He was kind of just distancing himself from that friendship that was going on. But even on the last season of The Voice, yes, I'm an avid watcher of The Voice. He mentioned Kanye like once or twice and like purely like fine tones, right? Like familiar tones of like, oh, Kanye, blah, blah, blah. Maybe just once, but it was nice to see, you know. I still like John Legend, and I like both of them being friends given their, you know, history. Those two were so close from 2004 to like 2007, 2008. And then we had that brief period where we're seeing like Ye and Kim and John and oh God, Chrissy Teigen hanging out all the time. And it was when like there were just good vibes between everybody. And it was like, what a great like group of 4 people. And then things went downhill for Ye in terms of like the public appreciation for Ye in 2018. And then everything with Chrissy Teigen recently, which I do wonder in the aftermath of how like the internet was so viciously after Chrissy Teigen for some of the things she had said or tweeted in the past. How John feels about like Ye and Ye's treatment and what he said about Ye. Like, it's just would be an interesting conversation to have with him. I don't think it's one that you could have with him. I don't think a journalist could sit there and be like, tell me about like, and him be like, oh, this isn't an insulting or like too delicate of a question for you to ask me, but it's like for a friend to ask him and have a conversation with. I don't know. It's just my journalist brain kind of going through things like, could I ask him that? No, but I'd like to. I'd like to hear what he'd have to say. Anyway, so Ye like took umbrage with that, but he still said, I love John Legend. I love Big Sean. I love these people, but people got to know you can't be like down on someone that changed your life in public, especially not in the middle of when I'm running for office. And I will say that like John Legend, like initially in 2018, just texted Ye, right? He didn't tweet out, I disagree with Kanye. Like he tweeted at Ye, like, hey, or he texted Ye, like, hey, I'm thinking this, and this, and maybe it would be better if you didn't do this. And it was Ye that took to Twitter and posted the text message conversation, to which John Legend was just like, okay, I guess this is a thing that's happening now. Um, but I still didn't hear him like say that much. And Big Sean, I know people have still pointed out like, where exactly was Big Sean like diminishing Ye in the public eye? I guess we just don't know what went on behind the scenes. Or maybe it was nothing. I mean, Big Sean on Drink Champs also was just like, I have no idea what he's talking about. Like he was saying, I was the first one to tweet like Kanye 2020 or like Kanye for president. So, um, let's see what else. Oh, he did talk about finishing a verse for Cardi B. So it seems like he's gonna have a feature on a Cardi B song. I know people were talking a couple weeks back about an upcoming Cardi B Kanye track. So I don't know if it's like a Cardi B song that's featuring Ye. I guess it's gonna be like the same way Easy was, and it might be something for a new Cardi album or what the deal is. But that's something to keep an eye on as well. And then what else do we got? Yeah, Kanye talked a couple times about not being canceled, can't be canceled. And he talked about the hats in 2018 and saying, I wore that hat for the freedom of opinion. My mom was born into a drinking fountain. In terms of like how segregation was, you had drinking fountains for like whites and non-whites, right? And that's something that Ye talked about on New Slaves. And it's just this idea, yeah, you were born categorized by like what drinking fountain you could drink from. And he said she was told what fountain she could drink in, and her, my grandfather, my father, they fought for the right to vote. New slaves never let me down. He talks about that. I will say I take responsibility for the fact that it hurt people's feelings. I also say I believe now that people, not just black people, but people across the board, they're realizing that you have to let Ye be Ye. I take accountability for when I've been ramped up and not had the right mood and attitude, but it was necessary for me to not take the programming and not take the bullying and manipulation, which is something that he has said in the past, where he talked about how he initially put on the red hat because he was feeling so not himself anymore, especially after the hospitalization at the end of 2016, which is something else that he touched on. He said one of the reasons that he like got put in the hospital was he had all these people behind the scenes telling him that he had to vote for Hillary. Like you couldn't not vote for Hillary. And, you know, he had mentioned Trump for the first time leading up to his mental episode. He had, what was it, 2 different speeches where he had praised Trump and like not been all about Hillary. Maybe it was just the one speech, but he had definitely mentioned Trump in a speech and people were like, what? Oh my God. Even people at his concert booed. And he's just like, what? So he was getting all this pressure behind the scenes about like who he couldn't vote for, what the proper things were to do. And we knew that in 2017, he was out of the public eye. Like we weren't seeing him really tweet. He wasn't doing interviews. He wasn't releasing music. Like Ye was essentially back in 2009, 2010, post Taylor Swift interruption, exile mode, as he kind of gathered himself in the aftermath of the hospitalization. And then his big return to social media happened, I think it was in April. And like a week later, he put the hat on. And he said that it was just him trying to recover his identity as someone that broke all the rules, got all the smoke, stepped outside from what you were allowed to do. And he wanted to like feel like himself again and feel like somebody that could challenge the status quo and drive conversation. And that's what he kind of talked about again in this interview, is just, I wanted to make it so you could vote for like more people, that you didn't just have to vote one party, that we could at least have this conversation. And he mentioned Mark Burrell, I think one of the like TV producers, like a famous TV producer, talking about how he didn't know or doesn't know what political party a lot of his friends are, that it wasn't like that big of a deal for them. And he's just talking about how like other people have the choice for who they can vote for. And I'm not saying like you should vote for this person, just like we should have a choice about who we can vote for, which is a completely different conversation than just like the Trump stuff in 2018, like a lot more nuanced, a lot more viable for a lot of people to have that conversation. And then he still talks about like wanting to be president. And I'm an industrialist. I opened the first sportswear factory in America since World War II, which I'm wondering if there were sportswear factories in America prior to World War II. Like, what were they manufacturing? After espousing a theory that claimed, it was the fathers have been strategically taken out of the homes. YouTube algorithm. And then he had this line about Jay said something really amazing to me. He said, it's like crabs in a barrel, but crabs shouldn't be in a barrel. Just talking about like people in America and black people in America and this idea that like, crabs shouldn't be all lumped together in one barrel. It was one of the more unexpected revelations from the interview. Ye revealed that he was eager to meet with Bernie Sanders. I don't think that that's an unexpected revelation. We heard in 2018 when he did the Charlemagne interview, he talked about identifying with Bernie Sanders, platform more so than Trump's, right? That he was more in Bernie Sanders' camp. And I'm pretty sure we heard this before. He had said before they'd try to meet with Sanders, and Sanders was like, no. I always wanted to meet with Bernie, and he refused to meet with me, but I always thought that there were things that he agreed with that the earlier administration agreed with. This is just around the time when I was wearing the red hat. Bernie met with Cardi, but wouldn't meet with me. I just felt like if I'm this polarizing of a character, why not meet with us? Yeah, and the fact that like Ye said that Cardi's kind of his hero because Cardi does all this stuff that Ye kind of does, and she's praised for it. And then Ye's vilified and labeled a monster for some of these things, which wasn't the case prior to the Taylor Swift interruption. Like, I still remember back in like the 2005 to 2009 period where Ye was a little bit of a media darling. They were lifting up his renegade way of approaching things. Like, he was a breath of fresh air. But as soon as the Taylor Swift interruption happened, no longer the case. And then like the altercation and then the conclusions. Considering that he has ambitions of obtaining public office, the tone of Ye's sit down with Jason Lee both made perfect sense and yet strayed from the intended path on several occasions. For the most part, Ye tackled the speculation surrounding his personal life in a more reserved and statesman-like manner than we've grown accustomed to. With that said, there were more moments in which his comments toward the Kardashian family will likely be seen as combative in ways that may undermine his cause to control the narrative. That seems dramatic to me. I mean, he was essentially saying, like, don't poke the bear, like, don't throw stones at me and pretend that, like, you didn't do anything, which is essentially what we've been seeing with, like, the TMZ and Page Six headlines. As we know, the Kardashians have, like, tremendous ties to media coverage and, like, can put stories out there like, hey, we want you to say this. Hey, this is our stance on this. And Ye has seen that over the course of being married to Kim for as long as he has, and knows when these stories are out there, like, okay, you're doing this to like hurt me. You're doing this to like lift yourself up and trying to make me look bad. So then when I do react, you can have the high ground. And him calling that out, I don't think is necessarily that dramatic of a thing, especially when you watch the interview and how he's talking and how he's saying things. It doesn't come off as like combative in the way that if you just read the quote, you could put in this like tone to it, right? Although it may have been a throwaway comment, his suggestion that he and Jason meet up at regularly scheduled intervals to discuss what happened last night and provide context to what's being reported could suggest that this isn't a one-off, and in reality, this interview could mark the beginning of a new era for Ye in which visibility and transparent communication with the public is more of a priority than ever, which is something that I think he was aware of. Like, he talked about having like a Solange or family that like went to bat for him. He talked about needing more time in the public eye, like having more people responding, like hearing directly from him, like people combating narratives about him. So I don't know, we might be getting that. Who knows? Maybe he'll jump on a podcast for an interview. Say maybe this one, Watching the Throne, a lyrical analysis of Kanye West. If any of you from Ye's team are watching 29 minutes and 39 seconds into this video, make it happen. But that's it for this video. Until next time, stay wavy and keep it loopy. Cheers.